Hi gang, Rob here. It is the afternoon of 18 August 2025. Coming to you today on an afternoon I would call a perfect Midwestern sunny day. And when I say sunny, there's some light cirrus clouds and a little bit of haze and maybe some Canadian wildfire smoke on an otherwise sunshiny day. Yeah, there are some happy little clouds floating by, but there's no unfiltered, bearing down sunlight today. It's just glorious to be outside. Between 84 and 86 degrees as I've been driving around on my afternoon route. It's just perfect. Nice day. You don't even need to be in the shade. It's not cloudy, but it's not oppressive. It's just perfect. And you know, 85 degrees is just about right. You can have a nice breeze. You don't really care if you don't, but you know it's summertime, and it is. So it's a good day. Coming on today with an announcement, and it's a big deal. A big deal. If you are or would like to be a customer of the TheApostleP Knife Service, the original precision sharpening service for the online knife community, today is your day. Because, and man, I've wanted to do this for 3 years. Yeah. I held out a long time raising prices. And I believe I did it in 2021, maybe 2022. You know, after a year or so of 7% or more inflation back then, and frankly, from the user's perspective of this economy, it was worse than that. I had to raise my prices to sharpen knives. But this year, during the first 7 months of Donald Trump's second presidency, there's a little more room in the clothes, so to speak, right? I got a little spring in my economic step. And although costs haven't gone down much, because that never happens, right? Things are looking up. So, there's one thing I had to do over the last few months, and that was work like a dog to reduce my backlog. Because when I tell you what we're going to do, I got a feeling backlog is going to go back up. So, but I think in 2022, I raised my sharpening prices across the board. Guess what? They're going back down to Trump 45 levels. As of the airing of this video, that will be the case. I think I have 2 rates and services videos out there from ages ago, and I always keep those video descriptions up to date with pricing. So I will make this update in both video descriptions before this video goes live. And I will copy that entire description in the description of this one, if that makes any sense. But basically, a knife that was 25 bucks last month, 20. If it was a longer knife or a complex knife and a harder steel, and it was 30 bucks last month, it goes back down to 25. And across the board, you'll see it. If you want specifics, look in the description. It'll be there. And here's something else that, when I started this mail order knife sharpening gig 13 years ago, a small flat rate box cost $5.65. It now costs $11.70. So I'm looking at something very closely so I can reduce postage costs for everyone also. Maybe 2 years ago, the USPS came up with a product they call First Class Ground Advantage, or more currently just Ground Advantage. So here's the deal. You got to furnish your own box. There are no flat rates. you still get a tracking number and you still get $100 of insurance. The difference on Ground Advantage versus Priority Mail is the method of carry. So Priority Mail is almost all by air, and the Postal Service doesn't own airplanes anymore. So they're a contract customer. And sometimes the carriers do not perform like we want them to. So if you, like I, have been wondering over the last year and a half or so, what on earth happened to Priority Mail? Why does it no longer get there in 2 or 3 days? Sometimes can take a week. That's why. United States Postal Service Ground Advantage, all trucks. And frankly, from where I live, just about everywhere I can mail a package to, Ground Advantage is going to get there at the same time or sooner than Priority Mail for less money. So I'm working on that in a couple different ways. But for now, the postal rates are the postal rates. But the good news is, basically, all sharpening jobs are going to be $5 less than they used to be. But for the specifics, go to the description. So bury me, my friends, and celebrate. That's kind of a trivial thing we have to celebrate. But collectible knives are trivial things anyway. But what else is going on? Oh, interesting last few days for the president since we mentioned him. Today was interesting, or yesterday, or whenever I guess Friday is when the summit was, the meeting between Trump and Putin. It was interesting. It was the first few moves in a game of chess, which will be very much fun to watch play out. But just looking at the body language of the two men on the public parts of their intersection last Friday, I kind of like where our champion is going with this. The joint press conference I thought was professional, cordial, comfortable, almost. And before those, if I have any of you left, I try not to, but if I have any of you left, that's kind of a joke, by the way. If any of you are in a dather because of the president being so polite to Vladimir Putin, I'm going to just answer that before I see the comment, because, and I'm not going to say this as well as President Trump did, but a few days ago he was asked about this, and his answer was something like this: we have a war in which thousands of people every day are dying. There are two decision makers in ending that war: Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine, Vladimir Putin of Russia. Regardless of whether you think he's a murderer or a mafioso oligarch or a war criminal, all those things might be true. Let's just say they are. He does command one of the most powerful militaries on the planet, and he has the largest nuclear arsenal at his disposal of any world leader in the world. And he's one of the two decision makers in a truce in the Russia-Ukraine war. We have to deal with them. Doesn't matter what we think of him. If we care about peace, we have to deal with him. And we've hired Donald Trump to be the guy to do that. He thinks he can be pretty effective at it. He has been so far. If he thinks the right strategy is being polite, cordial, and welcoming, and make sure that when he refers to his counterpart, he uses his first name because it puts things on a personal level, he thinks he can be more effective in this negotiation. Well, that humanizes Vladimir Putin. Well, he is a human. Trump knows how to talk to humans. He's been doing it his whole life. let's just see how he does. I think he's going to do okay. And then today was I guess it was a NATO meeting at the White House. So 7 other countries plus Ukraine, heads of state at the White House for meetings, and he had a joint conference with Vladimir Zelensky before the 9 of them met and their staffs. Frankly, somebody learned to putt. We got a Vladimir Zelensky in a suit who was gracious and thankful and deferential to the alpha in the room. And he had a great sense of humor doing it. He was asked by a reporter, it actually wasn't a question, it was a compliment on his dress for this event. It was the same reporter that sort of bagged him for wearing something different than a suit to the Oval Office last time he was in it. And they had a nice exchange that was humorous with a couple jabs going each way. And the reporter apologized and congratulated him, and Trump piped in and said he looks great. Thank you for noticing. And that was the tone of the meeting, in its rightful tone. Now, what's going to happen? This was reported as content of the meeting that wasn't on camera, but that Zelensky really wants a trilateral truce talk with President Putin and President Trump. And President Trump, again, kind of nailed it. He said, and I paraphrase, "I'm not really part of the decision, but if you want me there, I'll be there." I'm not going to go into detail about how brilliant that is, but it's brilliant. So we don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. I got a feeling, and this is pure speculation, I got a feeling there's going to be a trilateral meeting. I got a feeling it's not going to take long, and I got a feeling Ukraine is going to cede some land, whether it be Crimea or Crimea and a little more. Remember, Russia's held Crimea for 8 years now. No, more than that, 13 years. He's going to have to agree not to join NATO. Russia will probably agree to let NATO help a little bit with security and some good deals on purchased military equipment. Not given, and I didn't know this, guys. I'll tell you that in a minute. I think they're going to sign a peace deal, and I think it might last. Just speculation. But here's what I didn't know. I had heard this bubble to the surface, but it doesn't seem to me that a lot of the media talked about it much. Peter Doocy, I believe, asked in today's press conference with Zelensky and Trump whether we will continue basically the grant money to Ukraine to fund the war. And President Trump said that we don't do that anymore at all now. We're not doing that. That's over. After maybe $350 billion just given to them by the former administration, now we've allowed them to purchase military equipment. And we're doing it by selling that equipment to NATO, and NATO distributing it to Ukraine as they see fit for how much money they see fit. But we are getting paid. That's not a horn I've heard him toot before. And I haven't researched that either, by the way. But it's interesting. So I think that's going to turn out well, and I think it's going to make a lot of people wish their moms never met their dads, but he's going to win a Nobel Peace Prize. This will be war number 7 he's ended in 7 months, if it happens. Good thing he doesn't have the nuclear button, because he's a dangerous guy. Yeah. Oh wait, he does have the nuclear button. Yeah. So there's that. I just think it's a pretty good day if you're an American in the middle of world affairs, which we are, like it or not. I'm not going to go to bed concerned about that at all. Maybe you will. Sorry about that. But that's enough of that. Just my opinion. Yours may differ. Those of you who have been watching me for a few years know I have a, well, you might call him my best friend, actually. His name's Peter. He is half white of European, I think English descent, his mother, and half Persian from his father. I believe mom was an American. Dad immigrated in the early 70s, I believe, from Iran. A doctor. Lived their whole lives in the state of New York. First, I think, in the city, and then moved to Buffalo as they had a family, including Peter. But Peter is he's an atheist, and he's a libertarian who voted for Obama twice. And he cannot stand Donald Trump. He literally is the embodiment of Orange Man bad. Now, he has reasons, right, that he's actually researched. Maybe his source material wasn't the best always, but so he believes passionately that Donald Trump's a horrible person and shouldn't be president. And he, as of last weekend, still believed we're going to have a horrifying recession. I don't think we are. So he and I have disagreed about politics and faith since we've met, but we are best friends. Because we, you know what, we have conversations with each other, not to say they've never gotten heated, because they have, but they're always respectful, and each one, he and I, know that if we're talking about this stuff, at the end of the conversation, we're still friends. Because they're separate. And he loves America. And I love America. So feel free to enter that world with me. Have a different opinion, but know, if you're going to participate, just be sincere and have the same end result in mind, because if you don't, I have no interest in talking to you. Well, there's that. I will end it there. Grace to you and peace, my friends, from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Remember, the word is sharp. I'll talk to you soon.